The news hit Canada like a thunderclap. The United States had imposed harsh tariffs on Canadian imports. Overnight, industries from British Columbia's lumber mills to Ontario's auto plants were thrown into chaos. The open border Canadians had relied on for generations was suddenly closed. This wasn't just a trade dispute, it was a crisis of identity and security. For decades, Canada's prosperity depended on seamless trade with the US, but in a single moment, that certainty vanished. The tariffs exposed a painful truth. Canada's economy was dangerously dependent on decisions made in Washington. Political leaders scrambled for solutions, industry heads held emergency meetings, and workers feared for their jobs. The ripple effects threatened the entire economy. It was as if the nation's only safe harbor had been blocked overnight. The shock forced a national reckoning. Was it wise to tie Canada's fate to a single partner? The pain of the tariffs created a powerful consensus for change. Suddenly, the need to diversify trade and build economic resilience was no longer theoretical. It was urgent. The crisis became a catalyst, pushing Canada to look beyond its borders. The country began to imagine a future where it controlled its own destiny. This was the wake-up call that would transform Canada's place in the global economy. The nation's vulnerability had been exposed, but so too had its potential for reinvention. The journey to a new economic future had begun. For generations, Canada's economic playbook was simple: sell to the United States, especially energy. Pipelines carried oil and gas south, fueling American homes and industries. The arrangement seemed perfect, until it wasn't. Over 99% of Canada's energy exports went to a single customer. This made Canada a price taker, forced to accept whatever the US would pay. When American demand dropped, Canadian producers had nowhere else to turn. Billions were lost each year as resources were sold at a discount. The problem wasn't a lack of energy, it was a lack of access to global markets. While other nations built ports and terminals, Canada stayed focused on the US. The sudden tariffs were just the most dramatic symptom of this deep dependency. Every global energy crisis left Canada on the sidelines, unable to help allies or benefit from higher prices. Countries in Europe and Asia wanted Canadian energy, but the infrastructure didn't exist. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a strategic weakness. Canada's influence was limited, its economy at the mercy of its neighbor. The need for change was now a matter of survival. The single customer trap had finally sprung shut. Canada had to break free, or risk being left behind. Out of crisis, a bold new vision emerged. Canada would become a global supplier of liquefied natural gas, LNG. The plan was ambitious: build a massive pipeline to the British Columbia coast, and a world-class facility in Kitimat to supercool and ship gas to Asia. LNG Canada became one of the largest private investments in Canadian history. It was a declaration of economic independence and a signal to the world that Canada was ready to compete. The goal: break free from the single customer trap and forge new partnerships in Asia, where demand for cleaner energy was soaring. For the first time, Canada could connect its resources directly to global markets and receive fair value. Thousands of jobs would be created, and the national economy would get a major boost. But this was about more than economics. It was about influence. By supplying energy to Asian allies, Canada could play a bigger role in global security. The LNG Canada project united governments, industry, and communities in a shared mission. The challenges were immense, but the determination was greater. This was Canada's pivot to the future, a new path on the world stage. The journey had begun. The LNG Canada project in Kitimat is a marvel of modern engineering. A 670-kilometer pipeline crosses mountains and waterways, delivering gas to a facility powered by clean hydroelectricity. The result: the world's lowest carbon large-scale LNG plant. This sets a new global standard for responsible energy production. But Kitimat is also groundbreaking for its partnerships. The project sits on Haisla Nation territory, with Indigenous communities as true partners and equity owners. All 20 elected Indigenous bands along the pipeline route signed benefit agreements. This is a new model: Indigenous communities as co-owners and decision-makers. Kitimat proves economic development can go hand in hand with environmental leadership and Indigenous rights. It's not just an industrial facility, it's a symbol of a new way of doing business. Integrating sustainability and equity from the start leads to stronger, more just outcomes. LNG Canada is a beacon, exporting Canadian values along with energy. It's a blueprint for a prosperous, sustainable future. With LNG carriers ready to sail from Kitimat, Canada is finally breaking free from economic isolation. The Pacific is now a gateway to booming Asian markets. Japan, South Korea, China, hungry for cleaner energy. Canadian LNG arrives at the perfect time, creating a new pillar for international trade. Diversification brings resilience. No longer at the mercy of a single market, Canada can achieve price stability and higher revenues. This means more jobs, stronger communities, and investments in healthcare and education. The new trade routes also strengthen Canada's geopolitical ties. Supplying reliable energy to democratic allies builds trust and security. Canada's reputation for stability and high standards makes it an ideal partner. These shipments are more than fuel, they're a commitment to global security. Allies can reduce reliance on volatile suppliers, making the world safer. Canada is now an active leader, not a passive player. The era of single market dependence is over. A new era of global engagement has begun. Canada's entry into the global LNG market comes with a unique advantage: the world's cleanest LNG. Powered by renewable hydropower and strict environmental regulations, Canadian LNG has a remarkably low carbon footprint. From wellhead to water, every step is designed to minimize impact. This isn't just marketing, it's a reflection of Canadian values. In a world focused on climate change, customers want responsible energy. Canada's record on environmental protection and human rights makes it a preferred supplier. Buyers aren't just purchasing fuel, they're investing in stability and trust. Competing on quality and ethics, Canada is betting that sustainability is the future. International partners are already seeking Canadian LNG to help transition away from coal. Canada proves you can be an energy superpower and a climate leader. This values-based approach is Canada's signature on the world stage. It's what makes its LNG so significant. The Canadian LNG story is also a story of Indigenous leadership. For too long, resource projects ignored Indigenous voices, creating mistrust. LNG projects in British Columbia mark a new era, Indigenous nations as essential partners. Now First Nations are leading their own projects like the Haisla Nation's Cedar LNG and the Nisga'a Nation's Chilisims LNG. These will be the world's first Indigenous majority-owned LNG facilities. Revenues flow directly to communities, funding housing, healthcare, and education. LNG development is a path to economic self-determination and prosperity. Indigenous leadership brings a long-term, stewardship-focused vision. Projects are developed with the highest environmental standards, blending traditional knowledge and modern science. This approach benefits communities and strengthens the entire industry. Indigenous-led LNG is a model for reconciliation and sustainability. It's changing the future of Canadian energy. September 21, 2025. As the first LNG carriers depart for Asia, Canada stands transformed. The shock of US tariffs became the spark for national renewal. Canada has broken free from dependence, building a resilient, diversified economy. The pivot to LNG has secured prosperity and redefined Canada's global role. Canada is now a reliable supplier of the world's cleanest LNG, helping allies transition from coal and fight climate change. This is climate leadership in action, economic growth and environmental responsibility, together. Deep partnerships with Indigenous nations set a new global standard for inclusive development. Indigenous-led projects like Cedar LNG mark a historic step toward reconciliation and shared prosperity. Canada's model intertwines economic growth, social justice, and environmental stewardship. The journey of LNG has given Canada a new voice and confidence on the world stage. A northern beacon, Canada is now a trusted partner, climate leader, and model for a sustainable future.